Hi, I'm Rick Albert, and welcome to The Key to the City of Angels, the podcast where we unlock the secrets of Los Angeles real estate. With over 300 real estate deals under my belt, I've seen it all, from house hacking strategies that build wealth to helping clients close multi-million-dollar deals in one of the most competitive markets in the world. Every week, I'll bring you expert insights, market trends, and inspiring success stories to help you navigate the LA real estate scene. Whether you're a first-time buyer, an investor, or just curious about what it takes to thrive in the City of Angels, this podcast is your guide to making smarter decisions and achieving your goals. So grab your keys. It's time to unlock your path to prosperity in Los Angeles real estate. Hello, everyone. Rick Albert here with another episode of The Key to the City of Angels. I'm super excited to bring on Seth Phillips, Mr. ADU. And for those who have followed me on Instagram, YouTube, I actually do a lot of videos on ADUs because I'm very familiar with them. So Seth, thank you so much for coming on.
Great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I don't know why, but being Mr. ADU, of course, I love to talk about ADU.
No big deal. It's just a passion.
Yeah.
So how did you get into it?
I'll just give you a real quick backstory on me. I'm originally from Minnesota, you betcha, and you'll still hear a little of that in my voice. But I've lived in the Los Angeles area now for over 39 years, and I became a real estate agent and then broker and have been doing that for about 36 years. And I love being a real estate agent and selling properties and helping people buy properties. And everything was going great until 2007. And then something happened. The market crashed. And literally, it felt like overnight, I went from having this great job I loved and was making good money at to being unemployed. So I was looking around for something else to do while the market was hopefully going to heal, and decided to go into the house flipping business. And these prices sound crazy, and it really wasn't that long ago. We were buying foreclosure homes on the courthouse steps in LA for $120,000, fixing them up and selling them for $190,000.
My first job was buying properties at the courthouse steps in 2010. It was fun. It was wild.
That was fun. And anybody that's flipped houses even a little bit knows that by the time you get done with the fix-it costs, the buying costs, the selling costs, the holding costs, on those numbers, there's not much meat on the bone. So we had to learn the next skill set, which is how to manage multiple projects at the same time, which we did. So then we were typically doing about 12 properties or projects at the same time. Then as the market just began to slowly heal, we just moved into more and more expensive neighborhoods until now we were doing ground up new construction spec projects in the ultra luxury market in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, and Hollywood Hills. And those projects are so much more complicated that from the time you start to the time you can bring it to market is like 2 years. And
that's fast.
And that's fast.
That's fast.
And one thing everybody understands in the real estate business is that it moves in cycles. Sometimes it's moving up, but sometimes it's moving down. And as a spec builder with millions of dollars on the table for the dirt and millions of dollars for the construction, you don't want to be caught on the wrong end of that cycle because that could be devastating. So we decided to kind of switch gears and to do something more conservative, but similar to what we were doing. So we bought a probate property in Culver City, which isn't Beverly Hills, but it's a nice area of the city.
Yeah.
And our plan was just to knock down that tear down house and then build a big 2-story box on it, but something more modest that would sell in like maybe the $2 million range at that time, that we could do faster and there'd be less risk. So we bought it, we hired the architect, and just the weird how life can be. Almost the day the architectural plans were finished, I had my aha moment. And everybody's had these big events in their life that they obviously remember everything, why that event happened. But when you have a really big one, you not only remember the thing, but you remember everything about the moment that thing came into
Yeah.
your life. And this was mine. I was driving with my business partner at the time out to Ventura, actually, to look at some more property. And all of a sudden, he started telling me about this new ADU law that had just gone into effect. This is in 2018. And I don't know why, but there was just something profound about that I remember everything about that moment. I remember the hill outside, I remember the dashboard, and I immediately just deep dived into it. And the more I studied it, the more I researched it, the more I just came to believe that this was going to be a big part of the future of real estate. So I was able to convince my business partner to completely switch gears, and we'd already paid like $35,000 for these architectural plans. Scrapped that and just kept the existing house, beautifully remodeled it, and then in the backyard, we built the first two-story with rooftop deck luxury ADU in the city of Los Angeles. And I'm very happy to say, and probably why I'm here today talking about this, it worked, because we bought that property for $735,000 and we sold that property for $1,805,000 and set a new
Wow.
per square foot sales record in Culver City at that time. And here we are.
Nice. So how many projects do you typically work on like in a year?
Probably up to now somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60, something like that, because as the whole ADU thing has just exploded since then. We did it.
No.
I was the one that had to put together the financial projections on how we thought and hoped this thing would perform. But at that time, there was nothing, no data, no ADUs out there to talk about. But I just went back to, I think, the simplest rule of real estate, which generally speaking applies. And it's kind of like the same thing as if you have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house and you love it. And then your family grows and now this house is too small. And so you're maybe what a lot of people do in that situation is they sell that house and go buy a bigger one. But some people just love the area in the house so much that instead they'll just actually add a master bed and bath to it, for instance, to grow the house and stay in. And the same thing applies. Whatever your house is worth per square foot in that location, whatever you add to it in that same location should add the same value per square foot. And that's generally true, and that has proven to be true time and time again. And with ADUs, it definitely did prove to be true. And our project was a perfect example of that. And I know this is true because, in particular, on this project, when we sold it, the person that bought it, guess what? He moved into the ADU. They were almost the exact same size, but the ADU was just so cool that everybody I showed it to, they go, we'd rather live in that. And that's what he did. And he rented the front house out for $4,500 a month. And then a couple years later, he moved off the property and he rents the ADU for $5,500 a month. So if you use that as a reasonable metric as to value, the ADU is actually worth more than the single family home that it sits behind. So it's really been a wonderful journey, and that value proposition is really key in the process. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Now, are you doing it for yourself as well as for like other people? Hey, if I want to build a 2-bedroom or an ADU in my backyard, you'll do that too? Or is it mostly just on the spec side?
No, I went completely out of the spec building business. Although now, and we'll get into this a little bit more further into our discussion, I'm starting to come back into that part of it, because the wonderful thing that's happened is it's just kind of like that adage, I bet on the right horse, because at that time, this was brand new. Nobody knew what was going to happen next. But what has happened next is that virtually every year since, the state of California has added more and more pro-development laws that have added on more and more opportunity. And I was very fortunate that I started with it at the very beginning, and I've been able to watch and be part of the growth of this as it's gone along. So there's huge opportunities now compared to when we started.
Yeah, because I know one of the problems we had, I actually worked with a developer where we had flipped 3 homes with ADUs, but the challenge was always finding ADU comps.
Yes, yeah,
I When I bought mine, we did the FHA 203K loan, the construction
that's
loan,
great.
to convert the garage to an ADU. And the appraiser, and this was 2018, the appraiser had no idea what an ADU was.
Yep.
He gave, and I'm like, it's a permitted structure. It's
Yep.
this and this. I remember he gave me $10,000 in value. And then, oh no, it gets better. Then he took away $10,000 for not having a garage. He gave me zero value.
Yeah. No, that was unfortunately was and is a continuing battle because
It is.
appraisers, they work from a very specific time proven formula. They just match like for, and if there's no, then their job is to protect the lender. So
Yes.
they're almost always going to look at the most conservative possible outcome because their job's on the line. If they screw up, then it all comes back to them and they could be bye-bye.
I also asked an appraiser that because what we were seeing for the longest time was like 50 to 75,000 in value with the garage conversion. I'm like, but it costs like 100, 150. Right. And one appraiser, what he did say, and it does make sense, there's always secondary review with the lender. And oftentimes the secondary review is out of state. So if we put in 100,000, 150,000, yeah, that actually could be the value. But if you're in the Midwest, you're looking at this like, there's no way that could be. And then they start questioning the appraisals.
Yeah.
And then we run into problems.
Yeah.
But I will say recently I had a client escrow in the Valley in Reseda. And for the first time, an appraiser gave $100,000 for the ADU. Yeah. That was the highest I'd ever seen in the Valley.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. And our buyer that ended up buying our project, they definitely didn't give the value to the ADU that it should have. It was big, but it wasn't nearly as big. And so they basically said no to his loan. Very fortunately, he was putting massive amount down, like 30%. So it didn't matter. So the lender was still, yeah, you're okay, because it still fell within their guidelines. But that was, and even to this day, still is a little bit of a challenge. But speaking to that is the whole lending industry also has grown along with this. So they recognize the product. And speaking of the federal stuff and the 203K and stuff, they really get that now. And now they will give you the full value of that future value and take that into consideration on the front end. So it's a lot easier to do that. And we'll be talking a little bit more about some of these house hacking opportunities that this brought up along the way.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, we started off living in our ADU and rented out the main house, which was also nice because then we really understood what potential tenants would want.
Yeah. Oh,
right. Privacy,
that's good.
Yard space, washer, dryer, ceiling fan tip, just a light fixture, like all these little things that a lot of my clients wouldn't know because they're like, I'm not living there. I don't think twice about it. But now, no, I lived in one for 2 years, even during COVID, during quarantine, and my wife and I didn't kill each other. And we're still married.
Right there.
Yeah, like that alone means we did something. I'm curious a little on the construction side, and then we'll talk about some of the Senate bills that are coming in. One of the challenges when I've talked to people about building ground up for ADUs is that a good like use of money, because the building guidelines are so different with new construction, right? You have solar panels, you have fire sprinklers. So why, I'll play devil's advocate, why build a 2-story ADU that might cost, I don't know, 400, 500,000 versus just buying an existing duplex?
That's the magic question right there. And I've just recently came up with this new kind of explanation for that, because a lot of our business that we do now is with the multifamily owners because they can add even more ADUs. And it finally just dawned on me, because one thing I've learned about the multifamily owners in general is they're by and large followers of the oldest, simplest, and best rule of real estate investing: buy, don't sell. And the people that have the discipline to do that always end up with the biggest pile of cash equity at the end of the game. But that doesn't mean they don't continue to grow their portfolios. So they just keep buying more, and they can leverage the equity that they've earned and created along the way towards purchasing more. So they're mostly always looking for new opportunities. But in our market right now, using a duplex as the perfect example, if you go to buy a duplex anywhere in the Los Angeles area right now, your return on that based on the purchase price and the rent control issues is just not very attractive. These people that have these many properties or several properties bought them a long time ago when you could buy things on the open market that made sense out of the box. And then you could just make it even better, of course, by doing the right fix and add addition stuff to it. So they're basically just sitting on their hands right now, waiting for something to change, hopefully interest rates going down, something to change that equation. So I talked to them. Let's just say I came to you, Mr. Multifamily owner, and said, what if I could offer you a brand new state of the art duplex and you could buy it for $500,000 right now? Would you do that? And of course, the answer to that would be yes, because that's $1.5 million on the market right now. I go, you can do that right now. If you've got open space on your property, you can create a brand new state of the art duplex for $500,000 and get the full rent, and especially in multifamily where equity value of property is much more explicitly determined by the income it can bring in. So it takes out that kind of subjectiveness to it. It brings in this amount of money, it's worth this amount of money. Now you can have that brand new duplex for $500,000. So you are expanding your portfolio, you're adding more doors, but you're just doing it on free land because you already own it. And so just put it to work.
Yeah, I will say that's one of the conversations I do have with people about, like, why would I convert a garage? Why would I do this? You're not really doing it from the equity standpoint. You're doing it from the cash flow perspective and even arguably management perspective. It's one property tax bill. It's one insurance bill. It's one gardener. Because I notice I do investing also out of state. And I noticed for me personally, the 3 and 4 unit properties do best when I was investing out of state because of the one sewer line, the one roof, and all that. So it's easier to scale, is what I've noticed when you have more units on one property.
Exactly.
And I know it used to be, and of course, I always tell people I'm a smart ass, not a know-it-all. So it's, you have a single family house, you can add one ADU. Yes, there's SB9 where you can split the lot and do all of that, but then you have to live on the property. And then multifamily, it's one, you can add one ADU per 25% of the units. So if you have up to a 4 unit property, you can add one ADU, or the laws have changed?
Oh yeah. They've changed.
I know they made it easier.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, please, if you don't mind jumping into that.
I'll touch on both of those. Let's start with the multifamily. That, when they added the multifamily in, they made it simple that regardless of how many units you had on the property now, you could add 2 more. Plus, you could add another 25% under the 25% conversion rule. That was great, but they've recently upped it to now it's even more simple, is that you can add one detached, completely separate ADU per existing unit up to 8. So that's a 1-to-1 up to 8. Plus, you can still take advantage of the 25% rule. So on a 8 unit building, 25% would be 2 plus the 8 of the new ADUs. So that would be 10 plus your original 8. So your 8 unit would turn into an 18 unit.
Wow.
Which is the maximum density under that particular rule.
That's helpful. And then my understanding, and again, you can correct me. So with 8, so if it's multifamily, because the property was zoned for multifamily, even the new construction would be subject to LA rent control. Is that correct? Even if it's detached?
Yeah, it is rent control, but it's brand new construction. So it's
Right.
rent
You're starting
control
at
light.
market rent.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's another advantage of new, is that you do have rent control, but it's a radically scaled back from the total regular REO versions of it.
Yeah. Because that was one of the big like drivers of these ADUs, especially detached, was like, look,
Yes.
the main house will be subject to rent control if it was built prior to 78, but the ADU is not.
Yes.
So if you're living in the house, who cares?
Yep.
But your ADU is protected. Now there's the just cause ordinance, whatever. That's a whole nother conversation with a lot of beer.
Yeah.
But you get the idea.
Tequila,
So
dude.
what are some... Yeah, no kidding, man. I will tell you, they keep talking about trying to make rent more affordable. I'm like, well, you have to add housing supply. And they're like, okay, how do you do that? I'm like, you get rid of rent control. There's been so many studies that have been done that if you get rid of rent control, inventory goes up because people want to do more investing.
Yep.
But that makes sense though. If you have people where they're like, hey, I've owned this property for 100 years, it would make sense to hold on to it and then just build on what you have.
Exactly. Yep. And you keep what you got and just add more to it, and it's win-win. So that's a great one. Under the SB9, there's another version of that, because everybody talks about SB9 is the lot split, which is great, because you can turn a single family lot into 2 lots, and on each of those 2 lots you can have 2 units. But like you said, that requires the owner to live in one of the units for a minimum of 3 years, and then it goes.
Which doesn't seem practical.
So that's okay, but you don't have to subdivide the lot. And in the city of Los Angeles, they actually give you a bonus for not splitting the lot, because you get the 4 units plus you get a 5th unit under that same 25% conversion rule. So you get 5 units, and because you're not splitting the lot, there is no owner occupancy requirement. That's specifically tied to the lot split option under SB9. So it's weird. That's the one that's going to really be utilized more. The lot split thing is great, but it does then trigger that thing. So if the owner has to live in one of those, that's just a severe constraint on the use of it.
That was my understanding. When I had clients reach out to me about it, I'm like, are you prepared to live in a 4-plex? And they're like, no. I'm like, so then why do it?
Yeah.
So
there's lots of fantastic things with those 2 options that have really opened up the door to a lot more development, but there's even more now.
Yeah, let's go into it. Let's dig into it.
All right. The newest new ones are combination, and they're actually tied together. A lot of them are touch each other and are reinforced by each other. SB 684 is specifically just for multifamily, and SB 1123 is the same thing, but it applies specifically to single family. So we'll start with the single family. Now, basically any single family lot can be divided into 10 lots, and on each one of those lots you can have a unit. So
small lot ordinance.
1 unit per lot, which is what single family is, R1, now turned into 10 units. And because they're individual lots, that means that they can be sold separately if you want. And that's huge.
Yeah.
There's a couple restrictions to it. It requires 1,200 square feet of land per unit. So to get the full 10, you would have to have a minimum of a 12,000 square foot land start, which is, it's there, but it's a lot less common. But whatever amount of land you have, you can divide that by 1,200, and that's how many units you can put on it. The multifamily version of it is even more juicy. It's very much the same thing. You can divide the lot into up to 10 lots, separate legal lots. And on each one of those, you can put a unit. And each one of those units can be sold separately. 2 huge differences. It only requires 600 square feet of land per unit. So technically, you could have a 6,000 square foot lot and fit 10 units on it. That'd be a little bit hard to do, but
I was going to say, like, on a practical basis.
Yeah. But the other thing about that one is that each one of those 10 units can also have an ADU. So 10
Hmm.
units is now 20 units that you can put on there. So when you're done, you got 10 lots, basically with 10 duplexes on it. To maximize this, you have to go vertical. So we've already done a
Right.
preliminary design on a 3-story townhouse duplex unit. And on the bottom level, you have an entry and a foyer, and then a staircase that goes up to the main unit, which is the 2 floors above it. And then additionally, on that bottom level, you have the ADU. And the future owner of that duplex with the ADU on the bottom could use that ADU as an ADU, or they could use it as a rec room or a gym or an office or whatever. Total flex space, but it's a legal, separate living unit. So this brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, house hack. The oldest house hack out there for young buyers in particular is to buy a duplex, because the government, even the traditional lenders out there, will give that prospective borrower credit for the income that ADU could bring in and apply that towards their qualifying for that purchase. And this is so important to me because as I said, I am still in the real estate industry, a real estate broker. And the thing I'm most worried about right now from a market perspective is that now that the median price of a home in Los Angeles is over $1 million, what percentage of young people can possibly afford to get into the
Yeah.
game? It's down to such a small percentage. That's dangerous for the
Hmm.
market and for everybody. So now this is going to allow these young buyers to have radically increased buying power. And then they actually can use that ADU to help pay for that property.
Yeah.
So, as a way to get started, this is going to be fantastic. And guess who else wins? The person that's selling the property, because they can sell that duplex that, let's say we maxed it out, we've got an 1,800 square foot unit. So you've got 1,200 square feet of the top 2 stories, which is the main unit, and then you've got another 600 square feet on the bottom. This is going to be more valuable as that 2 units than it is just as a 1,800 square foot townhouse. It would still
Right.
have great value of that, but as a duplex, it automatically has more value, which means the seller of that property is going to be able to sell that product at a higher profit. They're going to be helping the buyer buy into a product that they couldn't otherwise afford. So literally, everybody wins in this equation. And that's almost impossible to find in the investment world. Almost
Yeah.
always where there's a really good deal for somebody, it means somebody else is taking it somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This
And even
one,
from a
everybody
development
wins.
and even from a development perspective, the cost isn't that much more.
No, it's
Right?
the
Because it's
identical construction,
yeah, like the
other
cost
than
is
an
like
extra
some
kitchen.
permits.
That's it.
So we're talking 20,000 maybe difference, $30,000 difference when you
Top,
factor in
top,
plans and
top.
yeah, top. So it's and it was funny because I know someone they're selling the small lot ordinance, similar concept in Mar Vista, and one of the angles that they've talked about is look, an investor could buy up all 20 of those units, but because they're each individual APNs, they avoid Measure ULA, the mansion tax, because that was one of the big issues was these big apartment buildings are no longer being built because they know if they exit they're going to get taxed $1 million. Here they can get the same 20 units but they're all individual, so they're way below that $5 million threshold.
That's great. I didn't even think of that, but you're absolutely right. Each transaction is a separate deal, which just even more profit for the developer. Plus, that developer then has the option of they can, if they want to, they can keep some as
Yeah.
rental and sell other parts of it. So it just opens up so many new opportunities. And the thing that is completely different from this, and you're right, this is very simple, similar to the small lot subdivision. But
Hmm.
there's a couple big differences. More units, number one.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
can be attached or detached, number two. But the main difference is that there is no parking requirement. Same ADU rule that's been there
Mm.
from the beginning. As long as your property is within a half mile of mass transit, which is a bus stop, and
Yeah.
virtually everywhere in the city is within a half mile of a bus stop, you have no
Yeah.
parking requirement. And the parking, by the way, it's such an important issue. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of ADU when the lawmakers were figuring out how to make this work. Because we started with this idea that you could add a unit in back of your house in your backyard. But
Right.
under existing rules between the back setback, the side setbacks, and then even if you added a unit, you would have to not only have the parking, but the access to the parking and the turnaround space. And you put all that stuff
It's
together, it
complicated.
literally left no land to be able to be developed. So by removing the parking requirement and reducing the setback things, they opened up this land now to be able to be put to new residential use. And it's really key to the whole process. So now, obviously, we always try to build as much off street parking as we can, but we aren't
Sure.
required to have all those extra things. We can just create space where you can put a car. That's parking.
Yeah.
It's not official parking, but it's parking. And the more you can add, of course, everybody likes to have parking. It isn't as mandatory as it used to be. The whole world about parking is changing, and car ownership, and so that has really changed the equation about what you can design. And that does vary depending on the location and street parking availability in that location.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. One of the biggest concerns with, especially in the single family, converting and adding all these units, like on, it sounds great conceptually, but it does change a neighborhood, right?
Yep.
And, people are buying up these homes in residential neighborhoods because they don't want to be next to apartment complexes. But now here they are. Have you seen pushback on that? Has there been talks about that? Because like I said, we have an ADU on our property, but we're the only one on our street that does have an ADU. So congestion isn't an issue. But I've been in other neighborhoods where I'm like, there's a lot of cars on the street. Not everyone's gonna like that.
Yeah, no, it's a very important issue. And there's a lot of thought has gone into this by people smarter than me. And it's been going on, this discussion, for a long time. And the reality is that, and this is something people miss, the ones that are, it's funny, like everybody basically agrees, yes, apparently we do have a housing shortage, and the only solution for that is to build more housing. Where to put it? And they go, yes, we should build more. But that's the whole idea of the NIMBYs. Yes, we should build more. Just
Exactly.
not wherever I am. Now, of course,
Right.
everybody
Not in
feels
my
the same
backyard.
way.
Exactly.
That means you can't build anywhere. So the opposite, the YIMBYs, the Yes My Backyard movement, has really gained a lot of momentum. But this is the funny part, is that this isn't new. This isn't a new idea. Many parts of Los Angeles, which isn't much different than a lot of major cities, we ran out of room a long time ago. So we just kept going further and further out. Now you got people that are driving 5 hours a day commuting into Los Angeles from Palmdale.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
work. We finally figured out that just suburbia thing, just keep growing the city outwards. At some point, it becomes just non-tenable. It's just ecologically, it's terrible. It's horrible for people to be in that stress hours a day, stuck in their cars in traffic. So we have to find a way to increase some density. So this soft density idea was brought in, but we already had that idea, and I can prove it. Because basically, a lot of Los Angeles and a lot of cities, a lot of it was built in the early 1900s by tract developers, just like they do now. But if you drive in many areas of LA, like over the around Paramount, the kind of south of Hollywood area, in particular, there's a lot of streets you drive down that are mostly the same original single family homes that are in that 1,000 to 1,400 square foot thing. But on almost every block or every other block, somewhere on that block is like a duplex, fourplex little courtyard building. Melrose Place, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Those neighborhoods didn't go to hell. They didn't ruin those neighborhoods. They actually strengthened those neighborhoods. And this is where people lose track sometimes. It isn't about buildings, it's about people. Most people are good people. And one simple thing that is undeniable is more eyes on the street should virtually always increase safety, not make it worse. So the adding more stuff, people have this vision of it destroying a neighborhood. And that one I have a hard time understanding. I understand that just by nature, when we're in a setting that's been that way forever, certainly since we've been there, we have a tendency to want it to stay that way. But that doesn't mean that's of course that has to stay that way. Why does it have to stay that way? So there are lots of things that can be done. And in the ADU laws, they were cognizant of that. So the original ones where you had to build in back of your house. And our project was a perfect example. We had a 1-story house in front and we built a 2-story ADU in back. From the street, you can still barely see there's anything back there. So when you're actually driving down that street where we built that, you wouldn't even know there was an ADU there. So in terms of the physical characteristics of that neighborhood, it really has zero effect. Now, of course, building these much bigger structures with more units on it, that is going to have more of a physical presence in it, but it still comes down to community. And one of the things that I'm very much about the community thing, because there's precedence on all this stuff. In big cities, New York being an example, most people were brought up in some sort of a brownstone, multiple units in it. And guess where they bought, or their next place they lived? It was a block away. So families were physically always together. And having families together, I think, is something that is missed in America as we've grown and become more and more mobile. Families are more and more stretched apart. And that's good in some ways, but I think it's also has some potential negative effects. So I think having a smart concentration of people in neighborhoods actually creates a better potential environment for people to raise kids in and to grow in. There's a lot of different ways of looking at that, but it's not like we don't have historical things to look at that prove this has worked in the past.
Yeah, it'd just be new to LA.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like part of the concerns, and you see it was funny because on the west side, you'd see brand new development and for lack of a better term, they're like modern boxes. So you have all these character homes and then you have this random box like popping out of nowhere. It'd be interesting because we do have historical preservation overlay zones like Hancock Park, parts actually of Van Nuys. It'd be interesting if they had some sort of design board for some of these properties, which I know from a development perspective, you're like, that just adds to the cost and time. But then it also can be like, look, we're trying to keep to some sort of characteristic of the neighborhood. So even if there are 20 units right next to a single family house, at least it's also Spanish or something to make it look like it fits in just a little bit more.
I completely agree with that. And I have personal experience with that because before this ADU stuff happened, we bought a property right by Western and the 10 freeway, which is in a HPOZ, a historic preservation zone. And it was at the end of the cul-de-sac, literally sitting on the freeway off-ramp of Western and the 10 freeway. And it was vacant land. And our original plan was to build 8 units on there because it was multifamily zone, which we would have been allowed to do. But we had to go through the HPOZ. So before we closed on the land, while we were still in our contingency phase, we took some preliminary plans into the historic meeting that they hold
Mhm.
monthly, presented them our plans, and we designed it to totally fit the craftsman character of the neighborhood, because that was very important to me personally, because that is a beautiful neighborhood and I wanted to come in with a new product, but to blend it in exactly what you were
Right.
talking about. And they basically fawned over it and they were, yeah, that's all great. And then, yeah, can you do a couple of these things? They made some suggestions. Yes, so we'll come back in a month. And we closed on the property. We went back a month later and we did all this stuff. They go, yeah, that's really good. Could you do this change? And we go, yeah, I told you, we want to do whatever it is that you want us to do to fit in. What I didn't realize at that point was is that when you're in that process with them, they're under no obligation to say yes or no. So
Hmm.
2 years later, scaling the project back 40%, we
Wow.
finally got a yes. And it was such an ordeal that by the time we got done with that, as soon as we made it through our final public hearing and they said yes, we just immediately sold it because I just didn't want anything more to do with that because it was just ridiculous. And every
That's always been a challenge.
HBOZ is different because it's got different people with a different attitude about it. But I still totally respect that process. I think it is very important and you can build around it. It would have
Yeah.
added minimal cost to us to build it in that style. So there really shouldn't be any pushback on that. If it's already got a craftsman neighborhood, you can design craftsman into modern
Yeah.
easily, and it doesn't add
Yeah.
that much cost.
Especially because we're talking the exterior, not even the
Yes,
interior. Interior could be almost
exactly.
anything.
Exactly.
I remember on the development side, when I was working with a developer, they built a lot of like Spanish style homes. And people, the neighbors would come in and say, "Oh my gosh, we get it. Like some of these homes just weren't practical. They had to be torn down." Like I know people are like, "No, we want to keep original homes." No, sorry, an 800 square foot 2 bedroom home is not practical.
Yeah.
But it's like, here's Spanish. We love this. Thank you for building this rather than one of those modern boxes. So then I'm like, look, here's the deal. Those modern boxes are selling faster and for more money.
Yep.
I need your help in helping me find a buyer for this Spanish style
That's
home
a great
so I
point.
can go, because I was like, I have to convince the developers because they're thinking about switching.
That's
Because they're like,
great. That's
wow.
brilliant. Yeah.
But it's like, you want it to be a community effort, make it a community effort.
That's very smart. Yeah, get the people involved. And I remember we did a project not too long ago where it was a bigger project and one of the neighbors was really upset about it and just a kind of a pain in the butt all the way through the process. And we just happened to go back there 3 months later to fix some minor thing. And that neighbor
Mm-hmm.
came up to our contractor and said, "Oh, I just wanted to thank you because I know that I was a pain in the ass during this, but one of the people that moved into that unit, they become my best friend." That's real life stuff. That's why I said it's
Yeah.
not about building, it's about people.
Yeah. I agree. All right, Seth, thank you so much for coming on. Are there any parting words? And then, of course, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, things are just moving up, as they say, and there's so many more development options. It's really important that you consult with somebody that really knows the subject because
Yeah.
there are so many options now. And when I started in the ADU world, there was no other ADU specialist. Now every kitchen remodeler is overnight an ADU specialist, and they're not, but
Right.
they can say anything they want. So just make sure you're working with reputable people. But yes, look at the options because as a already homeowner or prospective homeowner or a multifamily owner or prospective multifamily owner, investor, owner, user, all these things, there's applications now that you could add to the puzzle that could really make things immediately better for you in life and get you there faster, increase your equity stake in this real estate world we live in. And so it's a really viable thing. So I'm always available to talk to people. I have a cell phone number that goes directly to me. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to pull up any property you want. I've got this super secret weapon I use. It's called Google Maps, where you and I can
I use Bing. I don't know what you're talking about.
You and I can be on the phone and we can together be walking through the backyard of any property on the planet, which is bizarre, but true.
Yeah.
And I can do that. I've analyzed so many properties. I can look at it. I can tell you within probably 10 minutes of 95% of what exactly your options are on your property. And I'm happy to do that anytime. So you can reach me either on my cell phone number, which is 213-784-4447, or my email, which is also my website, is adugold.com. So my email is seth@adugold.com.
Perfect. All right, Seth, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for watching, and I will talk to you guys next week.
Great. Thank you. Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to The Key to the City of Angels. I hope you found today's episode helpful as you navigate the world of Los Angeles real estate. Whether you're looking to buy your first home, expand your investment portfolio, or sell in this competitive market, I'm here to help you succeed. Let's connect. Visit my website or follow me on social media to learn more about how I can help you achieve your real estate goals. And if you're ready to take the next step, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to work with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Together, let's unlock your potential and make your real estate dreams a reality.